So it's recording. All right, let me share the doc. There's nothing in the there's nothing in the road in the meeting for today. So, but I will post the. I'll just share window. So this window. Okay, I will. Sharing your entire screen can cause infinity mirrors, but I'm not doing that. Thank you, Google, for okay. Anyway, all right, let me post a link to this doc in the over here in the chat. And anyone is welcome to add anything. I have a couple of things that we can definitely talk about. So number one, I would say is Marcin, you've been having, I think there's been a lot of conversations happening about authorization and security. So
Is it too much? Am I too verbose?
no, no, definitely not. I think this is the
Because I
perfect
haven't.
place
I
to have.
have. I just only started. I need to. I will keep it down.
No, no. It's not a bad thing. It's just
Keep it
this is
up.
the time to talk about it. Yeah.
All right.
So RBAC, agents, auth, others, etc.
Actually, I don't think I'm on the RBOX staff, but yeah.
Oh, you're not?
No, somebody else is.
No, you created that thread. Don't gaslight me. Hold
Which one?
on.
Which one?
The let me find it. Hold on.
Ping me on
Oh,
on.
wait, hold on. This is not working. The new announcements. Wait. I'll find it. I know I'll find it. The ZTA, ABAC, RBAC, MCP tool,
No.
discover. Oh, that was not you. You're right. You weighed in, but that was not you.
Yeah.
That's fair. All right.
I just stick my nose. I just stick my nose everywhere, but
Got it. Okay.
And then I
Well, is that-
I take all the trophies. Do nothing and.
All right. Well, if there's anything you specifically want to talk about, I have a bit of an observability update, which I think people will be happy about, but should not take too long. Does anybody else have anything they specifically want to talk about?
I mean, I'm literally ripping the thing apart as I go, because I just started last week. So that's why I wanted to have the hashtag issues channel, and the things are coming, and I think it goes well. I'm receiving this feedback from you guys, which is amazing. I don't think I'm particularly beached with anything currently, so it's fine. Yeah,
Okay.
let's just go. That's it.
Cool. Alrighty. So I'll just quickly start off. So I think one thing that so my my two main work items in the for y'all right now is specifically around RBAC, right? So how do we authorize, right? How do we properly credential and authorize agents running in the system, right? What does that look like holistically, with multiple agents, with agents in other across the network, right? With tools, etc. So that's kind of the big thing that that's one of the big things that I'm looking into. And the other one is observability. And in terms of observability, we actually got a bit of a break or a bit of a boon this week. Eric Zhu in the upstream AutoGen community. He's awesome guy. I'll just post a link here from the AutoGen. Oops. The AutoGen. Here, let me just post this GitHub link. This. Oops. So this is the there we go. The GitHub link to the work being done in AutoGen right now to add support for the Gen AI semantic conventions for OpenTelemetry. So what this will enable basically is all agents and tools will be traceable via any traceable any telemetry tooling that supports these Gen AI semantic conventions, which I think Traceloop technically owns it, but most providers are now building on top of it. So that's awesome. I'm personally really excited about that. So I've been working with him and making sure that fits the spec and fits our work and really helps us move forward with observability. So um, I'm super duper happy about that. And so that should, all things, fingers crossed, that hopefully in the next week or two. Um, yeah. So that's an update there. Yeah, that's my big, I would say that's the biggest update. Yeah. So open the floor. Um, Anybody has anything they want to talk about? Thank God. It's usually so loud in here.
I
Yeah.
should have demo next week with the stuff that I'm working on,
Perfect.
with the Slack thingy and extending on the existing work. Obviously, let's see if I'll deliver. For now, my team thinks that they can talk to a bot. I wasn't trolling them back, but yeah. So
Nice.
I
Yeah,
have
yeah.
a question, Ethan. Maybe if you can help me to see in the roadmap or anywhere. I had a conversation with one colleague who was actually looking for his specific scenario, how he can use K-Agent. And in his scenario, he has like let's say K-Agent installed, and then he wants to connect the kubectl and tools to multiple remote clusters, right? Like,
Yeah.
so the context and airbag and everything should work and allow to switch the context between different EKS servers, specifically like AWS and stuff like that, right? How do you see this use case instead of like having K-Agent deployed directly on the server, actually have one installation which is connected to the multiple remote contexts? And because it's probably required, like, I mean, you can do it via MCP if you add AWS MCP remote tool, right? And then initialize it somehow, but still, you can do it also easily when you run MCP locally on your machine from VS Code or something like that, right? Then you automatically have access to your kubectl and all the context. But maybe we need a mechanism that you can run like agent CLI and kind of forward your local context to the MCP. And you see what I mean? Like to maybe start another pod with another context, or
Yeah.
you use some other.
So this is actually an area where I would love. So there's an issue. Let me go find it. Ah. Um,
As you're looking for this, I just want to make a quick comment. So for what you just talked about, that's kind of what I'm like struggling with. Like, where do I use like an agent to agent? Like, where do I? So it's so powerful at this moment. Like at any level, it seems like you can attach MCP almost. And so, like, where does it really make sense? I almost feel like I'm treating agents like endpoints, kind of, sort of. And then, if I need one entity to talk to another, I'm guessing I use A to A for that. But then you could use MCP to but I guess what I'm trying to, maybe there's some clarity or documentation that could say this is what makes sense. In other words, for me, it feels like the agents that are closest to the resources should have like direct access to MCP to the tool, and then everything else should be like proxying, or something. I don't know. That conversation just made me think about that. So plus I'm trying to fill a little time.
yeah, I mean, I think so. That's what this issue here specifically talks about. Right. So I don't know how
Yeah,
familiar
okay,
people are.
multi-cluster.
But with this issue, like I'm reading the way that I understand, like I understood what Dimitrov said is I have K-agent deployed, but then I want to use an agent against another cluster.
Yeah, so sort of, let's say like this, I'm the user, right? I already have my access to all the clusters, Terraform, anything, on my local. So if I run like any npm process locally and run MCP locally, everything works fine, right?
Mhm.
But then I want kind of to run it in the remote context. I want to run it with K-agents, and I can use maybe K-agent CLI or some other way to expose my local settings, my local context to the remote safe environment, probably even in different pod. I don't know, because if I just run it and share it to the shared app pod, which we currently have, it's not secure, right? Because everyone else will get my personal credentials and everything, right? So it might be that we would need some way to have a context per session, which is started in the totally isolated pod remotely.
Yeah, I think that's a great. Yeah, I mean, look, yes, no, that's totally
but
true.
wait, but this issue that you shared, Eitan, right? I thought that one has to do with having K-agent installed across multiple clusters. That's how it reads.
No. This issue is just the title multi-cluster support, right? So the context of this issue is just how do we do multi-cluster, right? It was created as
but what does
a
it mean,
specific
multi-cluster?
version of it. Well, that's what we have to decide, right? So it was the like when I look at this issue personally, I see, okay, we know people are running multiple Kubernetes clusters, right? When you are doing like any kind of DevOps application development, like SRE work, you have most likely have multiple contexts, right? So how do we make sure that K-agent is useful in a multi-cluster context, right? That when I read feature multi-cluster support, that's what I hear. Now, the text of the issue is about adding kube configs, right, directly to K-agent. Now, I'm not sure that is the answer. It might be. I don't know. We have to decide.
Yeah.
So that's what I think we should discuss. Is basically, okay, given the problem statement that we know that this tool, like this set of tooling, somehow needs to be able to support multiple clusters, right? What is the best way to do that? Right? I think that is the conversation.
And by the way, one more thing: if you take it in context of AWS EKS, it's not enough to have just kube configs. You need also probably a bit more, like AWS CLI with certain things. Depending how you instantiate the session, it can be a short-term, session which is forwarded with different, authorization or IDC or anything. It's really complex thing if you go to the public cloud with this, right? And
I don't think the problem statement is. I mean, it's not correctly defined.
Maybe okay. So
I mean, with your friend, if he can drop into Discord, we can have a chat. But the multi-cluster support refactor controller to support multiple Kubernetes APIs client. How?
No, that we shouldn't do. That I agree. That we should not do. Right. This, as written, we should not do that. Now, I posted about that. Right. So another. So like I had a bit of an idea here.
This is a matter of, just to clarify, right? This is a matter of, I want my agent to have access to Kubernetes tools or kubectl that operates or can operate within different contexts, right?
Let's define maybe a session context in terms of because we currently have embedded built-in tools, right? So we have agent, we have built-in tools, and we provide default context, which is service account and everything which we created,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But I think in the real life, there are more examples where this context could be different. And also when you have two users working in parallel on that context, they may change it, right? One switch to another, and we will have a conflict with the current implementation where
Yes.
tools will
Yeah.
start to work.
Yeah. I think we agree the current implementation with the built-in tools is not the best one, right? And it's not gonna like, but imagine having an MCP server, right? Like having kubectl CLI implemented as an MCP server, and then any user can configure that MCP server with any context that they want.
Right, correct. And this
Right.
this context is personalized because it belongs only to one specific user or session. Let's say if
Yeah.
it's session with
Yeah.
multiple users in the same session, right?
Yeah. So this multi-cluster thing, I think I understand it correctly now, was ability to have access to different Kubernetes clusters based on the context, not necessarily running a K agent across multiple clusters, right?
Yes, and if we want isolation, so my question is, if let's say we kind of define this context and we have a way to do it, right? Does it mean that we need to spin up a separate pod as a spare context, or we will just isolate it on some other way? You know, like this is from implementation and security point of view, right? Does this context means that, for example, for every session which multi-tenant, multi-user K-agent deployment, we will see a multiple pods running dynamically or not? Because currently, I think we don't have it, right? And it will be quite difficult to keep it stable, perhaps. I don't know. Like, any feedback on this?
It's a security nightmare, that's for sure, right? So if you want to access, basically, even if you take K-agent away and think about a cluster accessing other clusters, that's the use case. It's just that in this case, you want to have an MCP and a model taking for a stroll. That's something that the person that wants this feature needs to understand first, and how they solve the intra-server communication or access between those servers. It's not that magically you can provide some AI product that will solve
I mean,
this.
there might be a solution for this. In order to resolve this problem or security issue, we would need to run MCP directly on each remote server and just connect to it from one central K agent. This will solve it, because otherwise, if we share the same namespace, then everyone has in that namespace access to everything, which is not secure, right? In that case, you may have authorization to the remote, like agent MCP and stuff like this.
I would do it. I would do it much simpler. I haven't used the K gateway, but assume I do. There is a gateway, and you can have agents talking to agents between themselves, between those clusters. So you have two agents talking to each other. That is secure channel, HTTPS, whatever you want. Those have access internally. You do not expose, you do not connect in the various kubectl and any other unsecure ways. They talk to each other. They have access, to whatever particular things you want on a cluster. Maybe you have one, locally running on your machine, which actually you're allowed to talk to both of them. Do you know what I mean? If you want it that way.
Yes, but my point is, in case we want to instantiate the session and we want to connect our agent, right, to the remote cluster, that means that probably we need to spin up MCP on the target remote cluster, and then just connect it to the current MCP as a remote tools or something like this to the session.
Why would you want to do that?
Tyler raised his hand. Let's let him.
I don't think that's safe. I wouldn't go that way, but that's just me.
So I am just starting to work on a project that kind of ties loosely into this whole secure access of the tools issue. The path I'm looking at is extending MCP with its existing security layer, which is pretty limited and uses a little bit of RBAC, but my concept is essentially kind of like adding additional layers of security to it, adding like Java Web Tokens to basically sign the MCP
Mhm.
request and encrypt it, and another one to sign around that. So you basically have a like a hashed MCP call that includes the encryption, and then another layer of encryption around that, so you can't mess with that hash. Send it, and then that way, if the hash is changed, it lets the MCP server know, hey, let's dump this thing and not even keep it, and record the event and log it. And that way, it kind of adds some additional security layers, but it wouldn't interact with Kubernetes directly. It would just be additional extension of the MCP protocol already to kind of enhance its security and fill those gaps. Kind of, it wouldn't sort like input and output sanitation. You'd have to still do that, but it would add the extra security to kind of make it so you have everything there except for essentially that. You'd have authentication and validation of the actual packet for the request. You'd have stateful session management with automatic session closure when it has a time to live expire, and incorporating a pseudo ZTA framework using those Java Web Tokens to kind of do that. So that's my concept.
I'm gonna try and center this discussion because I
don't
think
know if that would help.
in general, I think that something like that helps in like as a general solution for some of the security issues with MCP, but functionally it doesn't solve like Kubernetes authentication is a unique beast because the RBAC is very tied directly, like it's very set in its ways, and it's also like kubectl and kube contexts are kind of the core way that you connect to these things, and so there's a lot of rules and specifics, and so I think at least in my mind it might be worth centering this discussion. So for example, let's say we have agent here, right? This is cluster 1. As I see it, there's kind of two different things that we're talking about, right? We're talking about either K-agent here, right, having access. This is kind of this is one model, right? Where K-agent has access here. Okay?
Mhm.
That's one model. Another, and that would be like direct kubectl, right? Whether that be in an MCP server or somehow in K-agent. Okay. Another model that Demetrio was talking about and might be, we need to discuss this, is basically actually K-agent is running here, or somehow K-agent is running, maybe some version of K-agent is actually running everywhere, right? I don't know even know what this looks
Correct.
like.
And then we might have like A2A or
Well, hold on. That's the
something, or
third
MCP.
model.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So then you have, some sort of like this is your user. Let me find a user really quick. Here, Bob. See, and now Bob is accessing all of these clusters, right? And now there's some sort of lightweight agent framework happening locally, okay,
Mhm.
as well as this stuff, right? Yet another possible model, right, is something where you have, right, again, maybe you have K-agent running everywhere, but there's the interaction here, right, is A2A, right? And so what you actually have is some sort of federated agent network here between different, and maybe you have like a hub and spoke model where this is like your K-agent master, I don't know, whatever, and then you have these like something other versions, and so, and again, you manage this communication with K-gateway or some sort of gateway to manage whatever. So I think there's a lot of different
Yes.
options here.
I think
Cluster.
these models will also repeat the different team topologies, which will like kind of, you usually have some S3 teams or kind of end user teams or tenants or something. So each of these will be like possible. All different topologies will just coexist. Yeah.
Which, I mean, maybe, so I see, okay, Tyler, or no, hands are gone down. So
I just put it down. I was trying to clarify.
Bob,
So essentially the like secondary models that you're kind of talking about, essentially the workflow would almost be like a Kagent orchestrator node and then Kagent client nodes.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. And so I think the question becomes, yeah, I mean, I agree. That's a good point, Dimitri. I mean, there's no reason that these can't all be supported, right? Like that's the cool thing is that technically these are all valid, right? So I'm wondering, what? Let's say let's ground. Let's call this hub and spoke. Oh, why is that text so small? What the what? Let's call this hub and spoke. Let's call this multi-context, and let's call this local first. How does that naming sound? Names are hard. Okay.
Cool.
How do people think about each one of these fitting into their workflow, the pros and cons, right? Like if we had to pick one, what are, what do people think?
For me, I think I want the one that has the A to A protocol kind of in the middle of it all. That's the one that I think is important, simply because I think Demetria, you kind of hit it. They're going to be like heterogeneous environments where they might not even be using K-Agent, they may be using something else. But I want to be able to interface with all of them. So I think the one that kind of surfaces A to A as the kind of coordination protocol, that's the one that's most interesting to me.
I also can add one more thing. The local first could be used just a bootstrap of the other ones, because you need to, at some point you're just bootstrapping, right? So you run the K-Agent CLI on multiple contexts and clusters, and then you kind of link the clusters together. You add this Java Web Tokens, other stuff, and then you kind of switch to the already like up and running mode. Yeah,
that makes sense to me. And we have, I mean, ironically, that there's prior art for this, like Istio does this, so to secure the connection and everything. I mean so it's in the issue. I laid out a scenario similar to the hub and spoke model. Here, I think the question becomes really, and this is where it gets a little interesting, is like right now, K-Agent, because it's session based, is stateful, right? So are these stateful or are these stateless tools and it's just MCP, right? Like, so I think that's where that's some interesting conversation to me, because your hub is really the only, like, you shouldn't want, I don't know if you want state everywhere, right? You really just want state in one place because of holding on to session context, etc. So that I think is an interesting, like, once you decide like that you like this model, right, then there's some interesting follow-ons that occur.
So you're trying to say that the difference between like a master K-Agent and those like other K-Agents, the master one will be stateful and will know actually about the remote instances.
It could do. I don't know. Yeah. Well, when I say stateful, I specifically mean about session context, right? Because somewhere something needs to store, right? Like, but fundamentally, the only state that really is like the only like database state, right, that's required here is the session contexts. And so, do we want? I think actually, no, you bring up a good point. It will probably need to know about the other clusters in some way, right? Because it needs to be able to say, oh, well, I know that I have access to these other tools or these other agents or whatever.
We can think about this from user, like let's model it from the end user UI. Okay, because maybe it will be simpler, right? So if I have these remote clusters, I would expect a drop down where I can maybe choose the different clusters, right? So we need some entity for that, and that entity needs to present it in the current K-Agent configuration. So I don't think we have a name for that, right, or place for that.
Yeah.
So that would basically be when you're building an agent, you could say, is it on the agent or on the tools? Right.
So imagine the current context that we have by default, right? We extract it into a new entity and we call it a context, right? And then in addition, we can create more context, which is remote context and other context, which is connected. Yeah. So then if you open session and you work with, I don't know, Istio agent or other agents, you can choose. I'm working locally or I work on that server, right? So I think as soon as we will have this CRD or some kind of definition, it will be more easier to do it.
But basically that context is relevant to the tools that the agent will be using, right?
Exactly. Like the difference is like you run it locally. You run locally on the current local context, all the commands, or you run exactly
Somewhere
the same
else,
thing,
yeah.
but you will run it remotely via some agent to agent or something. And the other thing, I mean, it should be very, very clear. So there should not be chance that the LLM will do a mistake and will run it on different clusters, right? No one's wanted.
Unless you pick multiple contexts and basically tell the agent you have access to multiple contexts, right?
Yeah,
No, I think relation is one. It's one session may have like one current active context, right? Maybe.
Why limit it? That seems, if anything, the most. Maybe at first, right? But like.
Yeah.
In order for the agent to be really powerful, it feels like it should be able to access everything.
You mean we can say check all the clusters on something?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. Like, hey, is anything wrong anywhere? You know, like what's going on?
Okay. Let's see. I'm thinking about numbers like 500 clusters maybe or something. It might be challenging.
Oh yeah. No, it'll be
sometimes
for sure. Yeah. I mean, at that point, you know, you might,
maybe less. Maybe it's extreme. That's extreme. But if this is happening, we need to be like kind of model
I think
it.
then it becomes a data problem, right?
Yeah.
Where you probably need some data management layer that is like pushing data or something, like some way, because most of the time, I have a question. Do people imagine ever doing write operations via K-agent?
Yes.
Yes. Like what?
Anything that makes sense. Obviously, I cannot tell you, right? Up to the point, I'm not going to be confident that the agents are doing what I want. That's why for now it's just talking. I had user yesterday testing if the agent can send to a Slack channel that I didn't allow, right?
Right.
You know, this basic thing, but definitely, well, my machine learning engineer, which is fantastic guy, Elvis, big shout out to you. He said to me, do not allow them to write anything. Do not allow it to write, essentially. But I want to go there, you know, but slow.
Let me rephrase. It should be able to write, right? Like, but like for example, right? In my opinion, at least for the next 6 months to a year, right? What should probably happen is similar to what Jason and Peter are working on, where the agent's write capacity, right, is to essentially write to GitOps, which then actuates the change.
Yes. Correct. Yeah.
So in that case, if you're talking about 500 clusters, you never actually need to read the cluster. You just need access to the data somehow. So what I'm trying to say is that, like, if you're talking about that scale, you're really talking about a data problem, and it's a whole other thing, because you never want a system that has access to, you know,
that's a little bit like extreme. I'm just saying this like the maximum amount maybe for some, but in reality, maybe one session will have access maybe to the few of them only, you know. Maybe let's not go deeper on that 500. Let's put it away for now. Okay, I'm just saying that if we have some context, that context can be remote server clusters, maybe predefine it. Also, it can be ephemeral, which is just taken from the current user CLI and just, you know, you give temporary permission on the session and something like that. I don't know, but at the moment, we don't have any object for that in UI. We don't have any way to say, okay, this is my current context.
Yeah, I agree.
I think that this problem is then also connected to the issue that that we talked about, moving built-in tools out of the out of the pod that we currently have, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely can be. Well, that would be related specifically to, oh wait, I'm in the wrong window, to this, right? Like, because if you know, because similar to what Dimitro is saying, if you had like whatever, an MCP here.
Yeah, I think once we move it out, I think, let's say we have a separate deployment that has the Kubernetes tools, right? If you want to use that MCP tool from K-Agent, I would assume that we would have a configuration option that you can pass to that server that basically tells it its context, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could just pass it as an argument. That is another simpler way to do it. The problem is that the way that authenticating with Kubernetes works is that the CLI makes the authentication call to the like issuer, right? Like Google or AWS or whatever the heck. And that stuff is just not going to be in this server. So we need to this is a tough problem. This is very difficult. This is easy. Oops, sorry. This is easier, but comes with its own set of limitations. And then this is more difficult, but has some definitely like observability and security benefits. So they all have trade-offs. Yeah.
So I think multi-context is probably the least secure, right?
Yep, definitely.
And maybe we shouldn't take this path because there will be like security nightmare, like we already concluded, right? With the agent to agent, when you have some sort of K-agent deployed on each target cluster, I think it's okay. We need to agree that this is a model we use and this is a prerequisite, right? And then we have a way how to kind of build the trust to them.
Yep.
We have some kind of bootstrap process and stuff like this. And then I think we can say, okay, then individually, each MCP will have local authorization, airbag, and everything. Fine. Between the agents, we will have on top of it like some additional layer of tokens and things with the roles. Maybe read-only and write access will be also separated per different roles, like admin users and regular users. And then we don't need to manage all this trust. Local permissions are airbag managed, and then cross-server managed by trust and JWT.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense to me for sure.
If you can establish a kind of external trust with the gateway, again, sorry, I'm just talking with my hands up over here. That could solve the intra-communication problem.
No, I mean definitely we can easily do that. It's really lightweight. You can run those anywhere, right? Like you could just run them here. I mean, it's easy. Like you could do whatever.
Because in the end of the day, they need to make those calls, and putting aside solving all your internal security problems that people always have, especially, I don't know, you do multi-cloud, let's say, and you want to do that.
Yeah.
Then you establish that trust. On top of that, you put your firewalls, and your SecOps is like, woo, let's go for a beer. Nothing gonna happen here, right?
Yes, but this is why we need to decide which role to do this level. Sometimes, if we consider, okay, for complex setup, you have a service mesh on top of something, then you can actually rely on the service mesh, zero trust, and other things, right?
But mesh is inside the cluster. I mean, outside of it. So
mesh is. Have you So I don't know if anyone here has used the multi-cluster with Istio Ambient, but it makes this a lot easier.
No,
I
agree.
That's what I mean.
Sure.
We should not solve the problem which we're not supposed to solve. I think if there is like ambient mesh or something, it's probably the better tool to solve that.
In my work, I delegate security as much I can to the tools that are designed to do that job, because any cowboy over there, I can just blow up entire company in a minute. So don't do that. Don't do it. Don't be a security cowboy.
No, I agree 100%. I'm beyond happy because this is the design that I prefer. So the fact that everyone else likes it makes me a very happy man.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, so I'll update the issue with the outcomes from this and hopefully update some designs, and maybe we can figure out who's gonna push this forward. Also, I posted about this in the general channel, but people didn't answer. Do we want to have like a specific contributors meeting? I'm a little worried. I don't want to I kind of want a space where we can get into deep details about like API design and programming. But I also don't want to expose anybody who wants to join this meeting to that, because this is supposed to be kind of a space where we can talk about anything related to K Gateway or K Agent or AI, like any of that stuff. So what do others think about that? And it doesn't have to be every week or whatever, but just
Is
something.
that every other week, right? Every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I did reply to that. I did reply to that.
Oh, you did? Okay.
No,
Well, I'll take a look then.
I just said yes. I just said
necessary. Sorry, Marcin.
yeah, go.
I think it's necessary, really. At least on this stage of the project, we have to establish some standards and common vision of where we want to go.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll get that scheduled. I'll try, and I think for the most part, we're in Europe and the East Coast, except Peter. Sorry. Okay. Well, we're in Europe and the US, so I'll try. Probably have to be. Yeah, scheduling is hard.
I mean, if I be honest, the only day, but this is just me. So if it will be the Wednesday, 6-5-ish after work, I'm gone. So I will cry if you will schedule this on Wednesday. But obviously, if everybody will want to, then tough luck.
I think
I'll put up a poll.
Yeah. Do a poll.
Yeah.
Like
exactly. Just still poll.
Yeah, where people are from, so we know where they're from or their time zone or whatever, and then we can figure out.
Yeah, there are also a couple of other meetings for, like you said, K Gateway, Istio, and other things in parallel. So there are not so many slots available.
Yep.
It's not going to be perfect for everyone, right?
No.
Yeah.
So yeah, but we'll figure it out. But yeah, okay. I just wanted to see if others were interested in that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I mean, if you're talking something like every second, every third meeting, we can also turn one of the regular sessions and more technical, just every third or once a month. I don't know.
Oh yeah,
it's also possible.
It's not a bad idea either. Let's see if we can find a time, and if there's no time, then we'll do that one. How does that sound?
Yeah, let's do a poll.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Cool. All right, I'll do that. Does anybody else have anything they want to chat about today? Okay. Well, I guess I'll take this opportunity to shout out Fabian in the chat, who had his first PR to K-Agent to fix up some of the CLI stuff. So thank you, Fabian. And thank you, Martin, also for your first PR. A lot of new contributions this week. That's awesome. I also wanted to welcome Dylan and Mayawa. I hope I'm not pronouncing that super wrong. I don't know if I've seen you all before, so if you want to introduce yourselves, or if you don't, it's also totally fine. But we love to see new people.
Yeah, I think I usually join K Gateway meetings. I just decide to do K Agent together as well. I mean, both groups, yeah. So I can get more understanding and learning, basically. Yeah,
Awesome.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah.
Well, welcome. Great to have you.
Hey y'all, I'm happy to introduce myself. I am an intern at Microsoft and kind of learning a lot about Kubernetes, getting into AI agents, things like that. So super excited to check it out and learn from you guys.
Oh yeah, well, welcome. Happy to have you. Let us know if you want to contribute, if you need any help with anything. Happy to help. So
Will do for sure. Thank you.
alrighty, awesome. So with that, I think we'll call it a week, and I'll see y'all soon. Bye, everyone.
Cool, yo.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone.